members of our Congress, you will always have within our government those that are above the law. Hey, it's me, and I want to talk about how President Trump is the first national conservative leader in history and in the world. And that's only possible because we have a very unique nation, we have a very unique constitution, and we have a very unique person, Donald J. Trump, as president. It's only because of these three factors that it's possible to have a national conservative leader, because in the rest of the world and in the past, you always have your garden variety nationalists or populists, and they have a mixed bag. Some of them are dabbling in national socialism, and it ends up being something similar to nationalism in terms of national socialism rather than national conservatism. Now in Europe you can forget about national conservatism. It's never going to happen because these nations all have histories that involve monarchies, and the history of Europe is very different from our history. And as I mentioned, our nation is very unique. But it's our Constitution that really enables us to have a national conservative leader. And of course, you're all asking, what's the difference? Well, the difference is very clear. When you look at Roosevelt, we have total domination by the Democrats in Congress, and we have a president for 3 terms, and you had the New Deal, which was really communism, but you also had National Socialism, a very mild form, you could say. Roosevelt could go up to any factory and say, okay, produce more, produce less, make something else. And they do it because, for example, Roosevelt's relationship with GM and Ford was almost identical to Hitler's relationship to BMW, Porsche, or Mercedes. And that is National Socialism. Plus you have the coddling and the government being involved in everybody's lives from early on. And like I said, Roosevelt was running a milder form, but you also had a lot of segregation. You had the internment camps, and of course Hitler was National Socialism on steroids. But national conservatism is the complete opposite, because we're talking about having those anchors in traditional American conservatism, and you have the national aspect, which is trying to have a one nation, one people concept, and it's America first. But the conservative principles matter here, which is smaller government. And it's early days for those types of big changes, but President Trump has already implemented a 10-point plan, which already resulted in firing a lot of federal employees, streamlining departments, eliminating waste, even recently demanding all of the departments to cut their spending by 5%, and merging some of these departments to have more efficiency. In other words, he's running it like a business, reducing the size. And so I say early days because we're talking about decades and decades and decades of build-ups, and the whole swamp is really connected to the massive size of government. Like I said, it goes back to the 1930s and 40s. So there's a lot of work to be done. But we're talking about the first steps in really reducing the size of government. And we're also talking about government getting out of people's lives. And we're talking about more freedom. And we have a Supreme Court now, which is tilted to the right. And in the future, it will be even more conservative, which is very good news. And we're talking about President Trump really making sure that you have the reversal of all these regulations, because that's the epitome of the government getting into your lives, right? be it your business lives or your personal lives, so many regulations that it is really a type of 1984 style government that we had. Eliminating those regulations really did wonders, but also reducing taxes. I mean, that is another form of getting government out of your lives, right? And so that is a process, and he's taking the steps. These are the types of conservative values that normally you cannot associate with any garden variety nationalism or populism or National Socialism, because those people all rely in the end on leftist policies and a tremendous growth of government. But you do know that if you have a more conservative type value system, then there's a lot of respect for law enforcement and the military. And of course, they need to be funded. But what President Trump has now done is not only fund the military, for example, in an abnormal way. The first step was in restoring the damage that Choco did. I mean, this guy really took a butcher's knife and just cut up our military, as I predicted in 2008. And so we're restoring that now. But in the future, we do have to beef up our military even more. As you can see, Russia and China, I mean, they got so rich because of the incompetence of past administrations, especially the last one. And they're building up their military with the most advanced weapons. Of course, they cannot compare to us, but we have to rely on being 10 times better than China and 50 times better than Russia. And that is because we're not playing games here. I mean, this is about the survival of our nation. And that is another conservative principle. As you know, on the left, they don't even care about our nation. They would erase the borders if they could. And so now I want to make a quick point about identity politics. You know, that's a leftist idea. And I have to tell you that National Socialists, they employ identity politics just like our typical liberals today. But even communists use that system, identity politics, or class struggles, or whatever Karl Marx was saying. But that's not what national conservatism is about. And the garden variety nationalists that are out there, that sloppy Steve is trying to connect to, they have nothing to do with what President Trump is trying to do. Because garden variety nationalists, they also use identity politics. And so there's a big difference between targeting, for example, Hispanics in our nation, or targeting illegal aliens who happen to be Hispanic, or anything else. So it's not about race. It just so happens that if you look on the map, we have Canada and we have Mexico as neighbors. If we had like 10 countries surrounding us, and 8 of them were mostly white people trying to illegally cross into our country, President Trump would be saying the same things about those whatevers. Because it's not about race. It's about illegal aliens. That's why we call them aliens. They could be anything. And we don't care what they are. We just know they're not American citizens. It's not hard to understand. But if you start targeting Hispanics within your country, or Jewish people, or black people, then you're talking about identity politics. That's leftist. So National Socialists, let me repeat, National Socialists, they use those identity politics. You can see it. It's always the Jews or the blacks, and they're talking about American citizens. You know, it's like you feel like saying shut up, because they don't understand what nationalism really means. It means that if you're an American citizen, you're in the club, man. You're in the club. You're an American citizen. It's like one nation, one people. And it's not about race or some, requirement of, I'm 1,024th Native American. I mean, you have Elizabeth Warren talking about that because she's using identity politics, because she's a liberal retard. And President Trump is talking about you're American. It's one nation, one people, one flag. It's very simple. And so the national part also means you have to extend your power to other people in our nation that maybe they were Democrats or are Democrats. And the recent pipe mailing incident really proved that. You had President Trump protecting John Brennan, Maxine Waters, Choco, the Hunchback of Chappaqua, Hillary Clinton, even Eric Holder. They were protected by this American president. Why? Because even though these people suck, they're Americans. And so we have an American president, and it's one nation with one people. And I know these people want to tear the nation down, and they want to undermine this very American president that just saved their lives, and they're not grateful. But that's not what it's about. It's about being a leader for the nation, even if people don't appreciate it. And even on our side, many people don't even give President Trump the credit. And some people feel like he just lucked out, or he just got lucky and the people that work for him, or maybe it's a trend or something like that. But we're talking about a genius here, and that's why I said one of the three factors is to have that unique person. Because what they're doing now to President Trump is badgering him, harassing him, trying to intimidate him, and that he would fold, like W. Bush did in his second term, which was a liberal term. And they feel like President Trump will fold, or that he will move to the left because he wants to. But they're wrong. They don't understand that if President Trump helps out the left, he's only doing it to take away things that Democrats are usually doing and stealing their stuff and their voters. That's why you have walkaway people. And he's expanding the GOP. He's not going to turn left because in the end, it's going to be an easy choice. If Democrats are doing the exact same things as President Trump or vice versa, there is no difference. We'll have the same as what we had for decades past. And it doesn't work. You saw that it didn't work. The old seesaw, Republican, Democrat, because it becomes the uni party and it becomes the establishment, and it doesn't work. Now, we're talking about one man, a very unique man. He came, and you have the whole establishment there. So the first people he picked for the cabinet, it was like a who's who to make people feel safe, right? A couple of RNC people, a couple of traditional conservatives, a couple of rhinos, a couple of globalists, and it's to make people feel safe because you don't want these people to have like a total shock. And it worked somewhat, but you saw that, still you had a lot of chaos. But all of those people are disappearing one by one and being replaced by people that are really the dream team. And they could still be replaced, and it's really a team that maybe changes according to the new levels that President Trump is reaching in his plan, right? And it's a national conservative plan. So you have to teach people that there's another way. Now let me tell you something. Some of these national socialists, they're talking about globalists, but in fact they are globalists because, like Sloppy Steve is proving, he's going overseas to Europe and trying to connect to some national socialists or garden variety nationalists that I mentioned, and trying to sell whatever he supposedly did, but it was really Trump doing it. But you're trying to sell something that only works in our nation, and you're trying to sell something that only Trump can do. So Sloppy Steve is a type of failure, but what he's trying to do is to be a globalist in the sense of connecting all these people that are garden variety nationalists and making it into a worldwide phenomenon or movement. But that doesn't even make any sense, Steve. I mean, what are you doing? And this guy always believes he's such a genius, but what a dumbass. I mean, the very core of nationalism is your own nation, not connecting with some politicians in various countries and we're going to help you with your nationalism. Then you go to another country, I'm going to help you with your nationalism, and we're all going to stand together, we're going to be worldwide nationalists. But you see how that is a type of globalism? It's America first and F the rest. I mean, they can be allies and all of that, but we're not going to interfere in their politics or have some type of a movement. Like I said, this type of national conservatism is not the garden variety nationalism that Sloppy Steve is thinking about, because he's a garden variety charlatan. But President Trump is a genius, and it's once in a lifetime opportunity here that we all have to have President Trump really be that national conservative leader, and it's only possible in our nation. So what I'm trying to explain here is that whenever you hear anybody talking about nationalism or populism in any nation, or even some people in the media now, I mean, they're talking about something that it's not the same as what President Trump is talking about. You know, it's America first. It's not, white people first. It's not about the government comes first. And that's what you normally have with nationalism, because in the past these socialists have mangled the concept of nationalism. Because if you're a collective and you want ultimate power, then you take total control, and that means big government, and that means being nationwide, i.e. nationalism. So President Trump is really different from that, and you will see that more, I guess, in 2022 onwards, because then you're really going to see the full effect of national conservatism, which is different from national socialism and your garden variety nationalism. So I don't expect people to fully understand, because you have to see it to understand it, because the rest sounds like a lot of theory. But just imagine like the perfect government that you always wanted. Smaller, leaner, more efficient, not bothering you so much, and there's more freedom, and making more money, more winning, more people have jobs, less crime. I mean, what's not to like? National conservatism, that's a ticket, and you know what? It's an American ticket. Only we can do this because of Trump. Now, I have to make a note about culture here, because the left has all these social justice warriors, and what they're really trying to do is, with their PC language and their censorship, it's trying to mold a culture in their ideal. And the only culture issues that I've seen President Trump espouse is really respect for the anthem, the flag, our nation, the military, law enforcement. But it almost seems like it's common sense. And it's very sad that you have to teach people about that. And that is the counterculture now, because you have liberals that control universities, entertainment, and sports even. And so a lot of it has been forgotten. The decency, the respect, even for veterans, liberals just don't have it anymore. And the truth is that it's not so much about culture, it's about patriotism. And President Trump is big on patriotism because he loves our nation, and anyone who doesn't is retarded. And so I don't really see it as a culture war. Now, several levels down, you do have a culture war because you have tranny bathrooms and all of that. Whereas President Trump is more about common sense and traditional American values. But he's not using the government to force people to think differently. I mean, he gets along with a lot of people, and everybody has, their little things that they like and don't like. And you don't want government to get involved. Otherwise, we're right back to National Socialism or communism. So I feel like we're the counterculture in that we're just restoring basic American values. Common decency, common sense, and winners are praised. And it's not about leading from behind. I mean, these are basic concepts, and it's not about forcing people to believe in certain policies. No, it's up to individuals. For example, Kanye West. I mean, he's so happy with the freedom of thought because he's very creative, but he's very liberal on many issues. But on the basic issues that are traditional American values, Kanye West and many other people can agree. And that is how President Trump wants to expand the GOP. That the national conservatism, it's going to be about using common sense, respecting the military, law enforcement, and just have common decency, have a moral compass, and to respect the nation and the flag, the anthem. What's wrong with that? Is it too much to ask? No, it's not too much to ask. So you have some people that are using the culture word to be social justice warriors, but on the conservative side, or let's say the fake conservative side, because we're talking about libertarians, we're talking about national socialists. They're in fact socialists. It's kind of like Charlottesville, where you have a bunch of liberals walking around with torches, and you have other liberals dressed in black, and they're fighting. They're liberals fighting each other. It's cannibalism. I don't see any Trump supporters there, and if they are, please don't be, because these are socialists. And so they have their culture battles, they have disagreements, and I always compare it to Hitler and Stalin being fraternal twins, and they love-hate each other because they're so similar yet different. It's like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, right? Well, that's the difference. But some people really say, hey, Pepsi sucks. I mean, I don't like to go to places where they have Pepsi. And I can understand that some of these people like to walk around with torches. Other people like to dress like ninjas. I mean, what are you going to do? They're liberal retards. But that's not what we're about. Americans go in red, white, and blue. And we don't walk around with torches, right? But the left-wing media likes to paint that difference because what they want is that we're all socialists. And one side would be National Socialists, the other side will be the communists. And that's their perfect world. With two parties, can't you see how that's a win-win for socialists? Well, here comes President Trump. And it's national conservatism. And it's new. And it's amazing. And we just got started. So these liberals are going to be blown away. And many Democrats are going to join the Trump nation.